You're watching TAG TV. I'm your host, Tahir Gora, in Candid Talk. Today, our Candid Talk is with our Prime Minister, Honorable Stephen Harper. Sir, it's an honor for us to have you in our show.
Well, Tahir, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
First of all, I would like to ask, how would you relate to the very important past week news, the death of Alan Kurdi? And what is your response to the opposition's criticism that the Canadian government is not doing enough to help Syrian refugees? I can tell you that many progressive Canadian Muslim groups think that blaming Canada in this regard is not fair.
Well, look, Tahir, obviously we were all deeply touched, affected, as anybody who's a parent, by seeing that little boy on the beach. I said it reminded me of my own son on the beach in that period, and so you can't help but be affected. Unfortunately, the story was circulated that the government of Canada was somehow implicated, that somehow this was a Canadian applicant. It was completely false. That was a complete lie. It's unfortunate that got broadcast, but that's what happened. But look, the reality is this. Canada, I think most Canadians know this, and your audience knows this. Canada, in terms of refugee resettlement, in terms of number of people, new Canadians, immigrants who come to this country, we are the biggest per capita receiver of newcomers and refugees in the world, by a long way. And we have settled over 23,000 people from Iraqi and Syrian communities during this period. And look, I said before the headlines, I made an announcement saying we were planning to bring more people in. But our policy is not just about refugees. We know, there's some 15 million displaced persons and refugees in that region. We know we're not going to solve that problem through refugee policy. We've got to bring in some refugees. We concentrate on the most vulnerable religious and ethnic minorities, but we've also got to provide humanitarian assistance to the millions of people who are still on the ground. Canada is the largest per capita donor of humanitarian assistance as well. And the other thing we know we have to do is we have to actually fight these terrorist jihadist groups that are creating millions of refugees. Otherwise, we're just going to have tens of millions more. So that's why we're participating with the international community in the effort against ISIS. And we're doing all of these things, and we need to do all of these things. But we know that we cannot solve 15 million refugees by refugee policy alone.
Mr. Prime Minister, what more do you think Canada can do along with the international community to combat the rise of ISIS in the Middle East, and how much of a threat is jihadi terror to Canada?
Well, look, I think it's a very real threat throughout the world. We have been seeing, your viewers have been seeing, we've all been seeing over the past couple of years attacks everywhere in the world, and places far, France, Australia, Denmark, places far removed from the hot zone. This is, though, why it is so important for us to be engaged militarily. The jihadist movement, this violent jihadist movement, is covering a wide area, but obviously the most dangerous individual group is the group ISIS, controlling big parts of Syria and Iraq. If we do not, first of all, we had to stop them from spreading, which we've largely done, but if we do not keep pressure on them, they are going to use this territory, a so-called terrorist caliphate, from which to plan attacks around the world. We've had attacks in this country. As you know, we had 2 Canadian soldiers killed last year. This is an issue that the entire global community is taking seriously. What's strange in this election, to hear, is that the other parties say they would pull out of the military mission against ISIS. Why would they do that, and how would that make Canadians safe? Nobody in the world but them thinks that. So I just think this all the more reason why we need a government that takes the security of Canadians seriously, why we need a conservative government.
So the coalition of Canadian progressive Muslim groups think that the opposition, especially NDP, is fear-mongering within Muslim communities by telling them over and over that Bill C-51 is targeting them.
Well,
how do you respond?
Yeah, they certainly are doing that. Look, Bill C-51 gives our police and law enforcement agencies the powers similar to what others have around the world. Things like being able to share information on terrorist threats, things like being able to take down websites that are advocating terrorist recruitment. These are things like giving organizations the right to go to court and intervene if they see a plot developing. These are common sense policies that other countries already have. I think it's unfortunate that the other parties are doing that, and I don't think Muslims will be tricked. The fact of the matter is, who are the biggest in terms of numbers? Who's the biggest victims in the world of violent jihadist terrorism? It's Muslims. It's Muslims themselves. Muslims are on the front line, particularly Muslim minorities are being killed with just shocking numbers around the world. And I think we have strong support obviously from progressive Muslim organizations, from the bulk of the community, to make sure that we stand solid with them in fighting these kinds of threats.
So Canadian Muslims numbers 1 million approximately.
Yeah.
What would you like to say to them?
Well, look, I say, excuse me, they've made a great contribution to our country. This is the first government in history, our Conservative government, that's actually brought some recognition to the Muslim community in Canada. We've celebrated Eid on the Hill. We had an iftar celebration at 24 Sussex, the first time the Muslim community was kind of formally invited into the Prime Minister's home. We have a number of Muslim candidates who are running for our party in this election, representing different parts of the Muslim community, Shia and Sunni. We appointed Canada's first Sunni senator, Senator Salma Tulajan. So look, this is, as I say, a community that makes an important contribution to the country, and we want to make sure it's recognized, and we want to make sure it's brought into the mainstream. We know that, as I say, that Muslim Canadians are not only as concerned about the spread of terrorism, but probably more concerned than most Canadians. And we don't want the Liberals and NDP taking them off into a corner, convincing people that somehow they're against fighting the terrorists. That's just not true about our Muslim community, and we want to make sure that they're integrated in the mainstream of Canadian life, our tolerant, pluralistic society that takes on the threats that we all face.
So my last question is about the topic that is also very important to voters this campaign, in addition to security, and that is economy. With all the economic instability in the world today, what can you do to protect Canada and ensure jobs and economic growth?
Well, look, the basis of our economic plan has been to make sure we are able to lower our taxes, and that we're able to do that in a way that's permanent. We provide a long-term balance to our budget. After the recession, we ran a big stimulus program. We've now balanced the budget. We've got that set for the long term with lower taxes. And we're making affordable, effective investments that will help grow our economy and help people. Today I announced, for example, enhancements to the registered education savings programs for Canadian families. Yesterday I announced support for the registered disability savings programs for Canadian families. These are things we can afford, keep our budget balanced, keep our taxes down. The choice in this election, the Liberals and NDP are saying they're going to grow the economy, grow jobs, grow the middle class by raising taxes and running huge deficits, huge and permanent deficits. We know that that is a recipe to put our economy at risk, to put jobs at risk, to put people's retirement at risk. And our strong pitch to the Canadian public, think about the consequences. We need a Conservative government to keep on the path that has been creating jobs, growth, and good long-term economic prospects for this country. We don't want higher taxes, and we don't want permanent deficits.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.